There is a patch of desert in southern Nevada that the U.S. government officially didn't acknowledge existed until 2013. 60-something years of operations, satellites passing overhead, witnesses driving along Highway 375, watching lights move in ways that made no sense, and the official government position was, nothing to see here. So what is actually going on at Area 51? The real answer is both more mundane and more interesting than any alien theory you've ever heard, and it starts with a problem the Air Force had in the early 1950s that they had absolutely no idea how to solve. To understand it, you have to go back to 1955. The Cold War is 2 years old at this point, and American military intelligence is flying blind. They know the Soviets have nuclear weapons. They know they're building bombers capable of reaching the continental United States. But they have no reliable way to find out exactly where those weapons are, how many there are, or how quickly the Soviets are building more. The intelligence gap is terrifying. The solution they landed on was a high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft that could fly so far above Soviet territory that no fighter jet could reach it. They called it the U-2. And to test it without Soviet spies finding out, they needed somewhere remote, flat, and completely off the map. A Lockheed engineer named Kelly Johnson spotted a dry lake bed on a map during an aerial survey. It was called Groom Lake. Perfect. The base that went up around that lake bed became what we now call Area 51. Officially, the military called it the Nevada Test and Training Range, or sometimes Homey Airport. But the workers who flew in from Burbank, California every Monday morning on unmarked planes with no flight numbers on the manifest just called it the ranch. And the ranch had one rule above all others. You didn't talk about what you saw. Workers signed non-disclosure agreements that were, by any standard, extreme. They couldn't tell their wives what they did for a living. Some of them spent entire careers telling their families they worked in a nondescript federal office somewhere in Nevada. When they died, some took what they knew with them. Their families only found out the truth decades later, after declassification. The U-2 program was followed by the A-12, a jet that flew at Mach 3.2 and could reach altitudes above 80,000 feet. Then came the SR-71 Blackbird, still one of the fastest air-breathing aircraft ever built. Every single one of them was designed, tested, and refined at Area 51. Here's where the alien connection comes from, and it actually makes a lot of sense once you see it. During the late 1950s, commercial airline pilots started reporting strange craft moving at impossible speeds in the skies over Nevada. The Air Force couldn't say what those aircraft were. They also couldn't say, relax, it's just our classified spy plane flying at 70,000 feet, because doing so would have confirmed the entire program. So they said nothing, or they mumbled something about weather balloons, and a rumor filled the vacuum. Which brings us to 1989, and a man named Bob Lazar. Lazar claimed to have worked at a site he called S4, a few miles south of Area 51, where the government was allegedly reverse engineering crashed alien spacecraft. His story was specific, detailed, and completely impossible to verify because the government denied his employment entirely. They still do. Lazar's story lit a fire that never went out, and Area 51 went from obscure classified base to cultural phenomenon almost overnight. The reality is that the base never stopped operating. It just kept evolving. After the Cold War spy plane era ended, Area 51 became the primary testing ground for stealth technology, The F-117 Nighthawk, the first operational stealth aircraft, was developed and tested there through the late 1970s and early 1980s. Drone technology followed. Unmanned aerial vehicles that the public wouldn't hear about for another decade were already flying over that desert. The base was always about staying ahead of the next war, whatever shape that war was going to take. Today, satellite images show a facility that has expanded dramatically from its original footprint. New hangars, longer runways, infrastructure that points toward continued active testing. Researchers and aviation spotters monitoring the area with radio scanners have picked up communications referencing aircraft designations that don't match anything in the public record. If you want to try seeing it for yourself, people do. The surrounding area has turned into a strange kind of tourism industry. The extraterrestrial highway runs right by the outer perimeter. There's a diner called the Little Ale Inn in a town called Rachel with a population of about 50 people. Every so often, someone drives too close to the boundary and encounters camo-clad security personnel in white trucks who have the authority, under federal law, to detain you. They don't joke around. If you find this kind of military history fascinating, subscribe. We go deep on the real stories behind classified programs, special operations, and what actually happens when governments keep secrets. There's more where this came from. What the government has confirmed, in dribs and drabs through declassified documents released mostly after 2005, is that Area 51 served as the primary proving ground for some of the most advanced aerospace technology the United States ever developed. The U-2 that was shot down over the Soviet Union in 1960, sparking the famous Gary Powers incident, had been flying missions from that base for years. The Soviets knew something was overflying their territory. They just couldn't catch it. The men and women who built those programs worked under conditions most people today would find unbelievable. 12-hour days in the desert heat with no outside communication. Security clearances that required regular polygraphs. If you were seen in a location you weren't supposed to be in, your clearance was pulled the same day. One former Lockheed engineer, in an interview given after most of the relevant programs had been declassified, described the atmosphere like this. Everyone knew they were working on something important. Nobody talked about it. You'd have lunch next to someone who was clearly working on a completely different program, and you both just pretended the other one wasn't there. That compartmentalization is still in effect today. The programs running at Area 51 right now, in 2025, are classified at levels the public has no access to. There are aircraft flying over that desert that won't be acknowledged for another 20 years, maybe longer. The aliens were never there, but the things that were built in that desert changed the shape of modern warfare in ways that are still playing out. Stealth, drones, high-altitude surveillance. Technologies that were once so secret that admitting they existed was a national security risk are now standard equipment for militaries around the world. Area 51 didn't keep its secrets to protect something supernatural. It kept them because the things inside were real, and real things can be stolen, copied, and used against you. That's the actual story of the most famous secret base in the world. YouTube's already picked your next one. It'll be in the corner of your screen.